Welcome back, Gary.
Well, it's good to be back again.
And we've got a really interesting show tonight. We've got two Microsoft Surface MVPs, as well as me and you.
Well, I'm not a Surface MVP.
You're a dev.
I'm feeling left out here, but
yeah.
You guys, you know what your stuff. You know your stuff here. So
we're going to be talking Microsoft Surface. We're going to be talking about the history of it, what we're doing now with it. We've got some. I'll slip some music tech stuff in there about it as well, because that's quite relevant as well. So let's get straight to Rob and Alex. Rob and Alexander, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
And the reason Gary and I wanted to get you on the show is we wanted to talk Surface. We haven't talked Surface for some time. I'm a big fan of Surface MVP, and I've got my Surface here. In fact, I've still got my original one down here somewhere, my original Surface RT. So I wanted to catch up on Surface, but before we do that, I just wanted to get a bit background on you and your Microsoft MVPs. So we'll start with Alexander. Lovely, looks like a lovely snowy background. Where are you? Where's the snow?
So first of all, for those who are just listening in and not watching all the video, it's a Teams animated background where I kind of hacked the Teams settings. So it's a Christmas themed snowy background with a nice fireplace there, with everything lit up in the fireplace as well. So it's all AI. But I'm located in Bergen, Norway. So for those of you who aren't known with a map, it's quite similar to the weather in London. It rains 390 days a year.
at least.
Well, at least. But thanks for having me here, Ian and Gary. Thanks.
Yeah, and so you're a Microsoft MVP. What is it? Surface, Windows?
So originally, it was the two first years, it was Microsoft Surface, and then I was moved into the Windows and devices for IT, and then the last couple of rounds, I've been split into the subcategory of both Windows and devices, but also the Surface team. So
right,
yeah.
So you see, you've got a background in Surface. Oh, that's good. So Rob, whereabouts are you?
Hi, so I'm in South London, so Bromley, South London. Lived there most of my life. Have been to Bergen, so I have travelled through Bergen, so I do roughly know where Alex lives. Very similar journey. I mean, my MVP journey kind of started almost on the second-hand citizen version of the MVP program. So I was a Windows Insider MVP for. I think that's where we met, Ian. I think, wasn't it? For what 5 or 6 years. Similar Surface journey to you. I still have a Surface RT and a Surface Pro V1. I very nearly tried to join the call on it today, and I couldn't find the adapter, and the battery lasts about 25 seconds. So I decided against it. So yeah, again I'm on a Surface.
Where's one of my
look
RTs?
at that.
Yeah.
Look at that. Yeah. Wasn't the keyboard awful?
Oh.
Yeah. Well, actually, this is the nice keyboard, not the touch one.
Oh, you got the nice one.
Somewhere
you got
else.
a nice one. Yeah, I've still got the original.
I'm still got the touch one on mine, but
yeah. Oh, it was awful, wasn't it? So I'm on what am I on today? I'm on a Surface Pro 9 5G today.
Excellent. Well, I mean, the reason why I wanted to talk to you guys, being Surface MVPs, is there's a lot going on in the Surface, and we've gone from very much consumer orientated, and now it seems to be more business focused. But then we've recently had the ARM powered, the Snapdragon powered devices, which bring it a bit more consumer again. So what I want to find out first is, what's the current lineup then with Surface for let's start with the business side, and then we'll go back to consumer. So what's the current lineup then for the business on Surface?
Who do you want to answer that?
Well, yeah, who wants to go first? Alexander, you go first if you want.
So I think we should talk about form factors, because unless you know the different brands and different shapes and everything, we can all call them Surface flip flops, and people wouldn't notice. So let's take a step back. On cell phones, you used to have candy bars, clamshell, foldables, etc. So we used to have all these form factors. We only now have smartphones. On the Surface lineup, we've moved away from only having the Pro, the one with the kickstand that kind of pops out in the back, so you kind of make it stand on a desk or on your lap if you would prefer that. and you could attach a keyboard if you want. So that's a traditional Surface.
That's it.
Yes, that's the one, Ian. So the traditional Surface, and then later Surface Pro, because the Surface was only ARM-based processor. And Rob, we're going to take over on the ARM part later. Yes.
I'm going to pull them all out as you're talking.
I am. Yeah.
So Surface is
Oh, there's the
kickstand.
terrible keyboard one.
There it is.
Horrible keyboard.
Yeah.
So Surface, kickstand. Surface Pro, still kickstand, but with an x86 or x64 processor. Then we got the laptop. No need to explain. It's kind of a solid base. You cannot detach the keyboard. Oh my, you really got them all. So the laptop. And then they had a third model they called the Book. The difference with Book was that you could detach the screen and then remove 2/3 of the battery, flip it around and attach it so that you had it on canvas mode. They had the Book 1, 2, 3, and then they moved away from that design. And then we saw the Laptop Studio, which again brings us to a second thing. The Surface Studio, which is a desktop model. You could always bring it around, but it's a desktop PC.
That's
The interesting
one that
thing-
I always really wanted one of those, but they were just so expensive, weren't they?
The interesting
were.
thing is to kind of deal with the naming is that you take a Surface and open it up as a laptop and bring it down in studio mode. So
Yeah.
Surface Laptop Studio. So that's the design platforms. And Rob, there are different processors in these, and the latest use is kind of conflicting. So we got Intel, we got ARM.
And you got one more as well.
You got the Go version, you got the
Yeah.
Laptop Go, and you got the Go. So
Yeah.
you got the mini version. The significant difference between the Go and the Laptop Go, from my perspective, is that the Go has the lesser CPUs, while the laptops have the Intel Core i5. I think the top SKU there have i5. So basically the same touch and feel when it comes to performance and monitor and size and lappability, but different form factor, different processor.
Right, so
That's a good start. That's a good
that was
starting point.
that
Yeah.
was an excellent.
That was 12 years of Surface,
That's
people.
good. That was good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
really
Oh,
impressive.
wow.
That's
Yeah.
like-
Yeah.
And I'm running the laptop studio here that I'm doing the recording on. So are they still making, Rob, are they still making all these now, or can you still buy all these different form factors?
Well, and there's another one actually that you missed, which was my favourite actually in the whole range, which again from a price perspective, I never got my hands on in the flesh. We sold loads to customers, but was the Surface Studio itself.
Yeah, that's
right,
the one
which
I
is-
was thinking.
which obviously is kind of where your Alex, your interpretation, your explanation of the Surface Laptop Studio, is really funny. I had a customer that spelt it as Surface, laptop, studio, because they actually thought they were talking about 3 different devices. So it was quite interesting. But actually it was quite a clever naming convention. I don't think a lot of people kind of got what they'd done with that, right? But I think the thing I'd say about Surface generally is, and I see quite a lot of the time a little bit of critique. I think if I'm allowed to talk candidly, I think one of Microsoft's big problems actually is consumer, right? In that they don't really get consumer, right?
And
They've
that's
had
something
so
me
many.
and Gary have talked about a lot on the show in the last few years.
Yeah, and you know what? As an off topic, I think it's having a massive impact right now with things like Copilot. But they haven't really, and it's funny you touched at the beginning, Ian, about having consumer devices and moving into business, and I'd almost challenge that and say I don't think they've ever really done consumer. Like, it's been available to consumer, but it was only more recently that they actually had the dedicated business SKUs with, that actually were different and had, slightly different class of chipsets. They changed the box, the packaging and those kind of things. But ultimately, I've only really seen outside of me and other MVPs and Surface fans and stuff, Microsoft fans generally, that Surface was, really from Surface Pro 4 was very much in business. And I've had customers that have been buying, very loyal Surface fans, across their whole organizations, since Pro 4, which I think was really the first time you had a device that was, I'd say, business ready. It felt like a business machine. It felt premium in every single way. It didn't crash all the time and break and those kind of things. And I think it was, Microsoft are quite good at experimenting at technology. And I think, part of that is their job, right? I think, they don't have the luxury of having total ownership of the entire ecosystem. They have to ensure that the OEM base has got access to all the technology. But you do see, and all the way through the evolution, we've seen things hit Windows first on Surface. So Windows Hello wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Surface. It was Microsoft who brought that out first in Surface. Pen, that was something. I mean, Microsoft did experiment with ink back in 2002 with, if anyone remembers, the XP tablet edition.
Yeah, I can't reach that at the moment, but there is one.
I still have mine actually, and I did do a blog on it a little while ago. I used to work for a company called Research Machines, RM Education, and we were the launch partner of XP tablet and things. So I was a big fan of that. But yeah, Microsoft were ridiculed over pen and ink by Apple, at the beginning, and now we have Apple Pencils and things like that. But yeah, if we kind of wind forward, yes, there's been, I think Surface Pro has been a stable. We've seen Surface Pro all the way through, and they continue to invest in Surface Pro. Laptop is their biggest seller, right? They'll always tell you that, and I think partly that's a shame. Actually, I think it's almost because people don't quite realize the power of ink and pen, and in fact, Microsoft in the latest iteration of laptop have dropped pen support, which I was quite surprised at, but I kind of get it. It's a laptop is quite hard to unless you're going to just quickly sign your name for an e-signature, then it doesn't really lay itself well to inking. But my device of choice is always a Surface Pro, because I like that flexibility. The keyboards are a lot better than they were before. It was very hard to use a Surface laptop on your keyboard, on your lap. And actually, the latest iteration of Surface Pro has led to keyboards that can actually work Bluetooth, so you can actually physically separate the keyboard from the device now and use it, which is quite cool. But your question, have they dropped things? They have. So Surface Book, as Alex said, got replaced. They had a few problems with. I did have a few issues with Surface Book with detach, and lots of apps wouldn't detach because they were hogging the GPU, and you couldn't kind of release the device. There was a button on the Surface Book that you pressed that essentially.
And they didn't understand the battery problem as well, because 2/3 of the battery were in the keyboard, and when they detached it kind of just went black. So
and it charged the wrong way around as well, didn't it? It didn't charge the screen first.
It tried to charge the screen first, but that was always an interesting key take. But yeah, and you mentioned a lot of technologies, and it's quite interesting because Microsoft went out and thought they needed a reference PC, so they designed the Surface RT just for show, and then the Surface Pro for the pros. And they thought, if we choose the right components, we're going to make a better PC than our OEMs, and kind of make Windows on a laptop great again. Because remember, there's a German word that I think should be introduced more frequently, and that's Zeitgeist, the time spirit. The time spirit of when Surface was founded was cheaper and cheaper plastic crap PCs with Intel Atom PCs, £199 or 1,900 krones. It was utter nonsense PCs. So a lot of people said that I want something that works, so I need to buy an Apple. Microsoft went ahead and wanted to create a flagship device, but they also had created hardware prior to this. So you mentioned Windows Hello wouldn't exist without Surface. I agree to that, but they did experiment on that on the Xbox 360. So they did a lot of hardware training, and they did a lot of hardware experimenting on the Xbox, and they used a lot of the security features from the Xbox that they put into the Surface devices. The problem is that people assume that the Windows team and the Surface team talk. In the beginning, not so much, and in the later years, it's become one department. So the Windows and the Surface team reply to the same leader. It's more merged into one. And we've seen that on just like you said, Rob, the Surface Pro 4 was the first stable, steady device. I remember for those of you who tried connected standby or instant on, that was a hot mess. If you enable Hyper-V, bye-bye connected standby and bye-bye battery. The only way you could fix it was to upgrade to Windows 10. That's when they kind of resolved the entire issue. So it was a permanent Windows 8 issue related to Hyper-V. But that was because the Hyper-V team, the Windows team, the Surface team had different problems at different targets. So we've seen that Surface have evolved, it come quite far. And I need to concur with Rob. Surface Pro 4 and going on, it's really a lighthouse device. It's everything.
And I think on that point, I think they have got a reputation for, it is a brand, and I think organisations buy into the brand, and I really see that. You look at a lot of flagship organisations, big legal firms and things. It's generally they're walking around with Surface devices, right? Or they've got them in, there's a law firm I work with, and they've got Surface Studios in the reception. There's actually a Dell laptop underneath them, weirdly, but they're there for show, right? Because they look incredible. And I think the attention to detail, back to your point, Alex, of where Microsoft really tried to set the bar for other OEMs, and I think that's kind of where they see a lot of their role. I think Microsoft's goal is not to get, not to have the highest market share of the device. They very much are the trendsetter, right? They are, this is what you can do. This is what you can generate with the very best of Windows and the very best of hardware. So you look at the way the kickstand works on a Surface Pro, it is, really since Surface Pro 4, right? It's been super, super smooth. It doesn't matter how old your device is, it still works like it did on day one, right? Whereas you look at some of the the counter copies, right, or the ones that have taken the inspiration, if that's probably the correct term to use, after 6 months, they slap into position, they fall over. Even some of the custom stands you can buy for tablets and things are generally terrible, even though they're actually quite expensive. The design of Laptop Studio, right, it's phenomenal, the way that I wasn't actually a massive fan of it personally, but the way it worked, it did glide into position. It was so super slick and smooth, and the studio itself, I mean, it's absolutely a thing of art. I mean, it absolutely is a beautiful kind of device. The other thing I think I'd say, as we touch on the kind of newer generation, is something, as I said at the beginning, Microsoft give up a lot, right? You think about all the things in the consumer world that have been and gone, right? That were really leading edge in their time. I remember, if any of you had the Surface Band, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the first one was,
Band,
you used to bash it on
Both
everything,
of
right?
them,
But the second one was really
brilliant.
nice.
Yeah, I love my band.
It was really nice, and it had more haptic sensors and things. I remember conducting a one-to-one once with a member of staff, and it telling me I had stress detected and stuff like that. Well, I don't have a device that can tell me I'm stressed now. It can tell me I'm going to have a heart attack, but it can't tell me I'm stressed. And they had some really cool technology, but no one knew about it. No one knew about their technology, and I think fortunately with Surface, people do know about it. It's got enough of a brand that people do know about it, but it is still very rare that you'll pop round to your friend's house or and they've got a Surface. So it's quite rare, right? I mean, like some of us here, and you've got about 15 of them, right? And the same, it's so I'm pouring out of my jaw. And we're quite fortunate with that, but I still think it's a brand perception problem. But they've also, in some cases, don't give up. And I think, Alex, you touched on the ARM, right? So Surface RT with ARM. And for many people, ARM is a new thing, and it's not a new thing, and it's certainly not a new thing for Surface. And I think, Microsoft struggled from exactly the same thing they struggled with Windows Phone, right? The app ecosystem, that's kind of what killed RT. There was no apps, nothing worked other than Microsoft's own. Windows Phone, you could argue, far superior at the time from a UI perspective than anything. Super clean, no apps. I think they got to 9% global market share, something maybe 11. But there was just no apps, and the apps killed it, absolutely killed the ecosystem. And I think, even when they released So Surface Pro X was actually, which was, when was that? 2017, 18, something like that.
But yeah.
Something along those lines. That was their next attempt to ARM, and again, that was kind of mixed. It could emulate. There were more apps available than there had been at any time. Microsoft did a better job of the optimization. The emulation was better, but when you ran it, it caned the battery. I mean, it absolutely caned it on those devices, and they were probably slightly underpowered. But it was a good device if you wanted web browsing and Office apps. It was a really great. Still got mine somewhere upstairs. Still works fine. Still a smooth kickstand experience. Really great. And so they have kind of kept on with it. And where I was surprised actually with the ARM generation was that they didn't take advantage of it. And that will be strategic, right? I remember some of us sitting at MVP Summit last year feeding this back to Microsoft actually. Looking at things like the Go range, right? Because the biggest limitation of the Go range is because they're smaller devices, they've got smaller batteries, therefore, the battery doesn't quite last what you'd expect it to compared to, say, an iPad or something. And I do think still to this day, they missed an opportunity to 100%. Put ARM into those devices. And, I hope that changes with, this next iteration of devices that we're seeing. So, it's good to see they haven't given up, and it's good to see, again, to answer this point, the team working really closely together. And if we look at where we are with this next generation, right? So obviously the AI PC, right? So that was the first batch that was released, very structurally released at business, right? So that was about giving businesses the Intel stable that they like, because there is still a lot of critique around ARM. There is still lots of non-native applications. VPNs is one of the big thing, and I use NordVPN. I'll do a shout out. I use NordVPN, and they've got an ARM native application, which is great, right? Because VPNs running under emulation just generally don't work very well. They crash all the time, and and depending on how you set your VPN up, it then destroys your internet connection, because that's generally part of the security feature that you enable. So it is really good to see more and more of these apps coming online. There's I don't come across, I'm using an ARM device now. I don't come across, there's nothing I use in my line of business that I can't use an ARM based machine for. And you do really benefit from, the battery life is just phenomenal on these things. I mean, I've got a Pro 9. I get 7-8 hours this is a year old now. I get a good 7-8 hours of constant use, Teams calls, video. It's, I wouldn't get that today out of an Intel device. Yeah. They are generally lower power.
That what you said about the Surface Go, especially, I'm a big fan of the Surface Go, and I use it for meetings. With the pen, I can with OneNote, and an ARM-based version of that would be ideal for me. And it's just a shame they never released it. And in fact, so my Surface Go 2, which I've been using for ages, was kind of dying. So when the 4 came out, I actually bought it, but I had to buy it through as a business. I
know, yeah.
And they didn't even make it available to consumers. And it's such a great device. And it was only a question of going on a different link, and it became in a brown box instead of the nice fancy box, as you mentioned before. Yeah, but it's a brilliant device, and I still use it all the time now. And it was kind of like they just thought, we're not bothered about the consumers. They were still selling the Surface Go 3, which I just thought was really strange, almost the same price.
And to me, that's the problem. I think, in education, right? And I think Microsoft are big in education, right? They're really, really big. And there's a big push on Chromebooks and stuff. And I think, we need to name another device, don't we? We need to name the cheap plastic one that did come out. Yes, the Surface Laptop SE. Which was a nice idea. Again, wrong chipset. But then, there's lots of old legacy applications in education. Although most things are web browser based, I think they missed an opportunity with that as well. I think the price point was phenomenally good. I mean, they were 200 quid. If you just bought one, I think they were sub that if you bought a load. My son got one. We got one on loan from Microsoft, and he did a review on it, and they let him keep it. And they were pretty good, for a device that had, as much processing power as a hamster. the the work that the Windows team had done with Microsoft to actually tune this thing to work was incredible. Again, the problem with it was that it had to have a business, or it had to have an Intune account to manage it, right? So you couldn't buy this device as a consumer. And to me, for most children at school, my kids, I'd much rather them have a laptop PC than a Kindle, to be honest with you, because they could run their Minecraft games on them, they could get to all the browsers, they could run full-blown versions of all the Office apps and stuff. But it was a real shame, actually, that again, back to the missing the consumer trick. It would have been a great way to get that sort of device into the hands of consumers for 200 quid. It's almost a stocking filler, right? That.
Yeah.
As a side note, I concur with you, Ian. It would be nice to have it as an ARM-based processor one, but yeah. I use it next to my bed. I have one of those pocketbook ebook readers, so I use that, and I use my Go 4. Yeah. The benefit is that they both use the same cell phone charger, so you can charge it with your USB, and you can use it while you're using it. So even though it's not an ARM-based processor, it's not very power consuming. So you can still charge it with the same charger you charge for your cell phone, pocketbook, e-reader, or whatever.
Yeah. And that's why I like it in meetings, because you're not trying to find, everybody else is scrambling for plugs to try and plug the laptops in, but it is, because it doesn't take a lot of power. It is good for that. But I mean, rising right back to when the Surface RT came out, it was covering CES with Garry, and the year before I had some heavy Dell, or that was a HP, I think, and everyone doing the keynotes sat in the press room on the floor near a plug, trying to get some charge. And that was the thing at CES. Everyone was doing the same. And I had my RT, and I got to the stage I could leave the charger in the hotel room during the day and just charge it at night. And for a Windows device, back in 2007, I think it might have been. Yeah, it was unheard of that you could get that little battery life. So yeah, that's why I think I'm really glad that they pursued the Snapdragon ARM technology, because we should. Like something like this size should have a massive battery life if it's got one of those processors.
Yeah, I think if Microsoft don't do something really exciting with that range next year, they've really missed a trick. Because there's a council that I work with in London, and their primary device across, they bought thousands of Surfaces as part of the Windows 11 move, but they standardized on the Surface Go range. So they've got laptop goes and goes. They have got the bigger, the grown-up size versions as well. But for most of their team, Alex, back to your point, their i5 chipsets in the laptops, and even the high-end i3s in the laptop goes on the 4 are good. They're good if all you're doing is note taking on OneNote and Office and Outlook and stuff. They're absolutely more than capable devices for those things. And them being ARM would be, I think, now with the evolution of the Snapdragon chipsets, I think will be incredible. So we should probably talk about them a little bit, shouldn't we?
Yeah. So I want to know a bit more about those. So I've obviously used the RT. I've used the Intel versions recently. What's in the Snapdragon ones that are out there now?
So it's funny, isn't it? So there's almost we can almost talk about what is in them, right? And I think there's a load of stuff that they will be very, 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 very soon. So obviously the flagship of the devices, and I think it was a really exciting launch, right? And I think the fact it was all about hardware, I think, was exciting. I think we probably do miss Panos a little bit from the glare and the excitement of the device stuff, right? And I think that's a real shame. But I think it was a really great launch. But obviously, what took the stage was, of course, all the AI features in the latest Windows 11, so 24H2. So things like recall, which is of course has been huge controversy over privacy and security, and so some of the things probably valid, some of it a little bit unfair in the fact that it was still going through testing. It wasn't actually released straight away. these things would have got picked up anyway. But I think I think that Microsoft do get a bit of a hard time sometimes with these things. But really what they had done was starting to perfect some of the work they'd already done. So some of the things that is a bit of a flagship for what's in the Copilot Plus PCs also exist today in the AI PC. So just for clarity, the AI PC is the laptop 6 in Microsoft's world and the Pro 10, and the Copilot Plus PCs are the laptop 7s and Pro 11 devices. So the laptop 6 and Pro 10s are Intel based. That's why they're kind of been aimed at business, and the marketing still points them in that direction. So they do have NPUs. They are, only 10 trillion operations per second, so lazy. Whereas the Copilot Plus, are a lot higher, right? A lot higher rated, much more powerful NPUs, much better battery life, thinner, all those kind of things, less power, all those things. And really what Microsoft doing is the majority of the new AI features that are becoming available in Windows 11 will be currently exclusive to the Copilot Plus range. Now we don't know as Intel advance, right? And 6 months is a long time. As Intel advance in their chipsets, we've got AMD, as well. All these devices are going to have NPUs. It's natural to think that some of these things won't necessarily always be inclusive of exclusive to Copilot Plus, but it's really demonstrating the next generation of almost on-chip processing. So if we look at the way that AI features have always been today, that AI is typically performed in the cloud by most of us. You need to have huge amounts of compute in order to, we hear about how many, thousands of gallons of water per minute that these AI data centers are consuming. We've now got the ability to start processing stuff locally, and that's kind of very much what the AI PC is starting to do, is to take a lot of that offload of clever stuff. So things like background blur that we kind of get used to because Teams does it and Zoom does it and WebEx and whatever else we're using. But the ability to have that happening locally on the device in an NPU rather than straining the CPU. If you've been there and used all these kind of things, suddenly Outlook can go a bit slow because someone's walked across your background and the processor's sitting there trying to fill in the pixels and try and make things look good. With that running on NPU makes a big difference. But for many people today, and I think this is part of the challenge to an extent, is the device is the enabler for all of the things that are coming. So, we're seeing Adobe, we're seeing, we were touching earlier on, Ian, about a lot of the music studio applications of things that are there. They are all being not just rewritten to work in ARM, which is great, but, they are being written to take advantage of the incredible capability of these NPUs in processing. So I think, over time, we're going to see really powerful, unique features that the device just handles without straining and coughing, when it tries to do something. I think that's going to drive, not just the Copilot Plus, I think the AI generation of PCs generally is going to drive the big refresh that every OEM has talked about. I think the other thing that Microsoft did well with Copilot Plus was it really kind of got all the other OEMs excited. And so we're not just seeing, I think this is really properly, I would say, the first time that we are seeing other vendors making ARM-based devices, whereas before it was pretty much just Microsoft doing their thing. I mean, we had a few, but not really mainstream. Whereas just this evening, my kids were going to bed and watching a bit of YouTube before bed, and I saw 2 different adverts for Copilot Plus PCs that weren't Microsoft adverts. There's one for HP, and I saw one for I think it was Acer, as well, on Core TV, and that's pretty cool.
And what processor would they be? Intel? Would they be the ARM Snapdragon?
So they were both they were both Snapdragon. Yes,
yeah.
They were specifically So if it's Copilot Plus, it's Snapdragon, it's ARM.
Yeah.
If it's AI PC, it's the Intel variant today. So it is still a little bit confusing. I tend to, when I talk to businesses, I tend to, rightly or wrongly, tends to say, look, today, if you're buying Surface and it's business and you need Intel apps, it's the AI PC, so laptop 6 Pro 10. if you're predominantly web apps and Office and fewer of those kind of things, and you want these devices that will start to drive these newer innovations and exciting new features that Windows will release, then you want to start to experiment. And in reality, I think, in business, we'll see a combination of those two things. So I think a lot of businesses aren't ready yet or don't think they're ready yet for ARM.
Yeah. I was going to say that's the one thing that's always puts me off on the ARM devices. I've got all various music apps and studio software and special drivers that they need for the ASIO audio drivers and all things like this. And I know that that's not going to work, and so it just wouldn't touch it until the summit. What was it, back in October, the Snapdragon Summit, where Pete Brown, who's been on the show in the past talking about the MIDI 2.0 in Windows 11, but they announced a whole load of ARM stuff coming to music apps and music drivers and everything coming to ARM. So I think that's going to be a big change. But I don't know, Alexander, what's the benefit to say a musician who wants a small, like a portable device like a laptop or like the Pro? Why would you want the ARM-based version over the Intel version?
Alex, do you want to take that question?
I think the question kind of falls back to something completely different, and there's no 1 minute explanation for me, so just bear with. But I think there's quite interesting to go back to the development of the CD, the compact disc, since you already brought up the music. It was a joint venture, and Sony was one of the founder, and Philips were one of the premium co-founder as well. For those of you who've been inclined into music, know that it uses a 16-bit sampling within audio. Problem was that Philips only had a 14-bit DAC available. The issue here is that they had to make the processor work overtime with 4x sampling to work as a 16-bit processor. So it needed 4 cycles to do the same job as Sony's 16-bit did. So when it comes to one piece, is my PC good enough? The question depends on your workload. The second part is, would you hammer in a screw? No, you buy a screwdriver. So depending on what you need, I would first say, do I need a Pro, a 2-in-1, so a Surface with a kickstand, a laptop, a workbook, a toughbook, a studio, or a desktop? Is my need based on a battery consumption or application-based need? Because in 99.99% of everything I do, I could use that with an ARM processor. And for the rest, I need my old Dell PC with a Pentium 4 to run Windows 2000. Because the application don't support the newer versions of Windows. And I think the most important question you need to ask is, what is my need today and what is my need tomorrow? Rob mentioned something very, very interesting, and that is a lot of the stuff we're talking about now is being run on your computer, but we've been used to have them in the cloud. Microsoft announced 2 processors. I think it was Cobalt and Maya, 2 processors that they've been using in Azure for some time to run AI. One of them is being displayed right now to run background blurring and all those features in Teams, so that you use that as AI processing in Azure, not on your local device. If you think that you will need local processing of AI resources, you would definitely go for the device that has the higher TOPS and performance of AI. If that is not your main driver, then you should look for either the platform or the form factor of your need. Because you won't find today a device that has the lappability of the Surface Studio with a studio mode with an ARM processor. So it depends, are you an artist that likes to draw or you're an artist that likes to create music? So it's a tough choice. It's a tough choice. But I think it should stand for, would you hammer in a screw? So, yeah.
And I think the fact that they,
I like that. I like that analogy. It's really good.
yeah, and they've got they're bringing the ASIO low latency drivers next year. Steinberg, Cubase. I noticed when I went onto my downloads the other day from my account that the version is a preview version of it available for ARM as well already. So you can install their drivers and their platform. So it's going to be interesting to see whether the other manufacturers will follow. But I get this is just one narrow aspect. But this is, I suppose you've got things like Adobe for the creatives as well. They're bringing out native versions as well, aren't they?
I mean, they were one of the first, weren't they? They were actually really, really on it quickly. Big fan. I mean, they had limited support in Pro X days. I remember them bringing. I think Photoshop. I think was the first one they supported. But yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because I think we always struggle with multi-platform. I think everyone said Windows Phone fouled because you can't have 3 platforms was too many kind of thing. And I don't think it was. I think it was, again, I think it was a missed opportunity and a market, but it ultimately apps that killed it. And I think apps is what I think has prevented ARM from being more successful quicker. I think it's just that now we've got more oomph behind it. And I think as well, I think Microsoft coming together and actually really building, Windows on ARM and it being, it having as much serious development. It's not a second-hand system anymore. It's got as much attention as the Intel side. And I think at one point, I think there was certainly lots of social press about is this the end of there was I saw not loads, but I saw quite a few tweets and stuff around, is this the end for Intel? I think it was a real there was a lot of talk about this is how it's now going, and I think it will be the two. I think the fact that Microsoft are also bringing more of the ownership on drivers into it being a Windows thing and not a third-party thing. I mean, obviously they're starting with printers, right? I mean, I think everyone will be grateful to not have the challenge of printer drivers, right? They're still a problem. I still can't get to print. I mean, literally, I've worked in IT all my life, and I still lose the printer sometimes. I have to reinstall it on a device. I mean, seriously, how hard can it be? But I do think that will be interesting as well, because we'll be more reliant on it will just be the OS that deals with it, and I think that will make things simpler. I don't know how we'll handle those legacy things that don't natively support Windows. Will they build and develop things for ARM? Guess time will tell. Things
like we mentioned the audio drivers, the MIDI driver that's coming out, the MIDI 2.0 driver that's coming into Windows later this year. They're taking away the need for the manufacturers to do their own MIDI drivers.
Yeah, exactly.
In Windows. So that makes it easier to go cross-platform then.
Yeah.
I kind of teased about it just a couple of minutes ago, but that's the story behind one of the gaming consoles, because it was originally meant that with the Windows CE team was supposed to create a gaming console because of the threat of the PlayStation 2 from Sony. Because the CE team had already made game consoles with some other vendors. But then the Windows team brought to the table something they called DirectX. And that's where basically the Xbox comes from. It is Windows lightweight that runs DirectX on a box. And just like you said, Rob, you don't need to configure what kind of port your mouse is connected to. You don't need to sample your audio card into the application. Everything is dealt with by the DirectX that is built into Windows. So I think we're going to see more to the way that drivers and security is being operated in the kernel of the operating system itself. One is the user friendliness. One is that you don't need to trust third-party vendors to make an updated driver. But there's also the security feature of that. I'm not sure if you remember the happening of this summer, something called CrowdStrike.
Oh yes.
So basically,
we'll call that hitting the
yeah. So basically, what happened is that there is this security implant in a driver that talked to the kernel that kind of broke. So although it's not a physical component, is it was still a driver for the application that to run the security feature. So drivers are a security feature as well. So you have usability, user friendliness. You have the financial part about how many have been throwing away MP3 players, printers, webcams since you cannot find drivers anymore? Everyone. So you have the economy, but the outmost is the zero trust, so the security. And I think there's one thing nobody talks about anymore, and that is all the parts of Windows that has its legacy from 1989. That was started to be made with Windows NT. Windows NT was shipped 31 years ago, around the time that Garry was born, I think. But this is really interesting because some of the features you find in Windows XP, Windows Vista, Windows 7, all the way to Windows 11 is made from the same parts of that.
Yeah.
And just to mention one thing, and I'm going to kind of drop that because it's so mind baffling. NTFS, the file system, was almost cut from Windows NT because it was so hard to create a new file system. And that's still with us today.
Yeah.
So if you think that, well, what part of Windows are we? Oh, NTFS. It's even in the name. NT file system.
Yeah, NT file system, yeah.
They almost got rid of it in the Vista days, didn't they? They
did
try
to
get rid of it, re-FS, but not
Yeah.
re-FS was later on. But yeah, but they did try and get rid of it, but yeah, they gave up with that.
Yeah. Tried, failed.
Yeah. Sometimes
and they still you only have to hack about in the registry, and there's still so many references, as you say, to NT. I mean, let's be honest. We talk about Windows 95 still, and there's still remnants of that sitting in the OS we love.
Well, as I used to say about Windows NT, it's new technology and it always will be.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's funny. Yeah.
So it leads me to the next question then. Not wanting to break any NDAs or anything else, which I know Microsoft don't really share very much of their future plans with MVPs or anyone outside the very small circle. But what do you think we've got next for Surface? What do you think we're going to see next, Surface-wise? Alex, we'll start with you.
Oh, I think we're going to see better battery life, and what I'm really hoping for, and just to be honest, I have no idea. But based on what we see in the market, what we see on security trends, the Surface Pro 10 and the 11 have now a built-in NFC reader on the top left of the corner for your Ubico, your kind of FIDO2 chips. I think and hope that we're going to see something that detects that you leave the device, because people tend to leave the device unlocked and you don't know what kind of state that is. If that's going to be a hello camera detecting your presence, people worrying about privacy should rather talk about recall. but that's going to be a different topic. But I think that Windows Hello, cameras, battery, AI. Not sure in the order, but that's what I think we're going to see an improvement of.
Yeah. And do you think we'll see any different form factors, something that we haven't seen so far, or is the form factors we talked about right at the beginning what we're going to see more of?
I have said that I will bring Norwegian chocolates to everyone on the Surface team if we see the Surface Duo or Surface Neo being shipped.
Don't get me started on that.
Yeah.
That's another one, isn't it? Another one that was so ahead of its time. Let's not go there. We could do a whole session on mobile, but
I can't talk about it. That's going to be a problem, but I really hope that I'm going to see a two-monitor device, a two-screen device. But I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Rob, what about you?
Yeah, I think similar. I think we're seeing a lot of stuff around passwordless now, and I think the technologies are there now. It's just about who's going to be bold enough to go forward with it. I think I definitely agree with the security coming into. I mean, Microsoft talks a lot about security from chip to cloud. I think if anyone can do it. And trend set, I think in security, I think it will be Microsoft. I think I'd also like to see built-in privacy screens. I think that's something that I've seen. I remember seeing this at CS probably 4 or 5 years ago now. Gary, you could probably keep me honest, but the ability just to, like you say, we talk about previously with recall and all these kind of concerns. You walk into an office and just see people walk away from their desk, laptops are logged in, signed into finance applications, yet people are worrying about AI seeing what they do. Anyone can see what they do. We've kind of had the technology in Windows for a while, haven't we? Dynamic lock. It never really works. It just locks when you don't want it to and doesn't when you don't. But so I think, the fact that Microsoft have looked at this stuff, I don't see why they can't build that in, as you say, NFC or hello. You're generally looking at your machine. It needs to be smart enough to not look at your face, but to look at, your actual closeness to the device. I do think we'll see that. Again, things we touched on earlier, I think it's just logical to assume that the power of Snapdragon would make itself into the more mobile devices that Microsoft have got. So we've been told nothing on this, but I'd be very surprised if they don't do it in the next iteration of Goes, assuming they keep the line up. Again, who knows? What else do I think they might do? I do kind of think they've given up on mobile. I think it's I think it's a shame. Although, Satya said he wished he hadn't, right? That was his one regret. Yeah, they had a chance to do it again. So I don't know. Outside of that. I think we are going to see Intel work really hard. I think what happened with the announcements on Snapdragon kind of hit them quite hard. They weren't ready. They dropped the ball a little bit. I think we're going to see, huge race of innovation between Snapdragon and Intel in that market. But I do really believe this is the time for devices to do what everyone's almost promised. Every device you've ever bought, every generation has always been, great battery life. And I think, I'm looking forward to I've got a laptop 7 on order. And I went for the 15-inch one, right? Because that claims up to 22 hours of battery. But I have a customer that's got one that has told me they've got 18 hours out of it. Now, that's just phenomenal. If you can actually get, I can't talk of my own experience, but if you can get a device to seriously do that in usage, that's unreal.
Yeah.
Absolutely unreal.
A final top on that. There's one brand we haven't talked about, and that is something that kind of kick-started a lot of these things, and that is, what will Xbox be launching? It has been talking about a portable Xbox. Will that have Teams support, Rob? Will we then have a portable gaming console with gaming in the cloud and a SIM card?
It's funny. So it's funny, isn't it? Gaming and cloud streaming, right? And I think, again, that's another use for these AI chipsets, right? Where you do need some local processing, but you're not really running the game. You're running the stuff that, the video experience. And, I was playing around just this week with Cloud PC, Windows 365. I got myself a cheap Bluetooth keyboard. I used my Samsung phone with DeX, and I've got a TV that I can run it on through the browser with a wireless keyboard connected, and it's really good. I mean, it's a little bit laggy on my set. I've got a £400 Samsung TV. It's nothing particularly special, but the fact that I can actually play games on it through Xbox, it did struggle with some of the really high frame rate stuff. But I can use Word, Excel, PowerPoint, even Teams calls on it, like it's a PC, and I think that's going to be really interesting. I think the price point needs to change for Cloud PC to really make it, viable to not have a PC. But that's quite interesting. World of the world of PC without a PC.
Yeah, maybe that's where a future Surface device. Go ahead, Gary.
I was just going to say, so we might develop a hat on the Cloud PC and on all that stuff. It definitely makes for a really interesting future for that, because developers are the biggest consumers of high powered devices by a long way, and if we can move away from that and actually shift that power elsewhere, but also the ability to switch between environments as well. I often have 7 or 8 clients at a time switching between, and you're trying to do separation concerns between them, and doing all that stuff is really good. One thing I just wanted to go back to, actually, because we were talking about the Surface RT and the AI and the ARM-based clients. There is a very famous science fiction author who I won't name drop because and he is still writing all his books on the Surface RT because of that battery life issue, and because the Surface RT is perfect for writing, still perfect for writing stuff on it. It's not. It's a great typewriter.
Yeah.
And he has been looking for that next device for ages. I think that we might actually get it for him at long last.
Just get him a go. I mean,
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, he did actually.
It's almost the same size.
Yeah, it was a form factor thing with the go, and he actually, really weirdly, he likes the curve, the keyboard on the Surface RT, which is.
Mind you, I guess if you've been using it for that long, you're probably very used to it, right?
Yeah, very quick for doing it. But
yeah. But no, I mean, on the Xbox, so I was amazed actually in lockdown, right? When you couldn't get a laptop for love nor money. I mean, a friend of mine worked for a big investment bank, and they were desktop PCs in the office every day, got sent home, put on furlough, and unless you could get a laptop, it couldn't work. Simple as that. And yet most people, lots of people had, whether it was an Xbox or a PlayStation or something at home, and if not, they probably went and bought them because their kids were at home and they needed to try and do some work. And even to this day, I'm amazed how there isn't a cloud PC app for Xbox. Amazes me. I mean, you've got this absolute machine of power that could run it really, really well. I mean, if I can run it on my Samsung TV. So again, I just think there's, and I've had these conversations with the Microsoft team, and there's obviously reasons, right? There's obviously reason for these things. But to me, it's an app, right? That's the thing that Microsoft are doing with Windows. I know this is Surface, but from Windows perspective, and Windows is now just an app. I've got Windows on my Samsung phone.
Yeah.
I've got Windows on my Samsung TV. It's
Final question before we kind of run up this part. What is your favorite Surface accessory here, Ian? You showed me all the keyboards, and you mentioned your friend here who loved the keyboard of the RT. What is your
use the D word?
Yeah, it's a dial.
The
dial. I got my dial to work with Cubase, and that was brilliant. And Camtasia Studio as well, so it's great for video editing. I must admit, I don't really use it just because it's in a drawer now, but actually, when I remember and I use it, it's a great little accessory. So yeah, I did like that. And but it was a bit. I think when they went to Windows 11, there was a pretty bad bug with it where it wouldn't work. So there was a couple of workarounds, but I think they fixed that now.
They also removed a load of features when they got rid of the OneNote UWP app as well. That was really well built actually for dial. And obviously that's not a lot of those controls didn't make their way to the x86 version. It's a shame.
Yeah, the dial was good, but yeah, I think it would be nice to see some new accessories. I kind of want the Surface brand to be like you mentioned earlier, pushing new things out that maybe are a bit not mainstream, and like with the original Surface RT idea that you could have these different keyboards that you could clip on that had different. Things, maybe I'd like to see some. Yeah, I'd like to see some.
I think on the whole
that.
passwordless thing as well. I think they released a new the Surface keyboard, just the Surface keyboard. But again, I was surprised for the price point of those devices, you get a Copilot key. But the fact that they didn't follow through with fingerprint readers, for example, on those, and I think there's this big push, isn't there, around passwordless, and I think Surface have got a really great opportunity to push it. I mean, they've redesigned, if you've seen on the latest preview builds of 11, they've redesigned the whole Windows Hello experience, right? It looks really nice. It's really, really modern. And you didn't realize how out of date it actually was until you see the new version. You're like, actually, it's really nice. But I think, again, they've got so much opportunity to drive security, right? It's the big thing. It's the big thing that Microsoft are being hold over the coals a little with things like recall and stuff. And I think, their security story is so strong across the chain, supply chain and everything, all the way through. I think it is underrated how important that is about owning the entire ecosystem. It's something that, if you're an Apple fan, you kind of take for granted without realizing it. But I think in the Windows arena, Microsoft is the only vendor that can truly say they have that control all the way through the stack.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point to leave it there. Alex and Rob, really do appreciate joining us tonight. That was really interesting, a bit of a trip down memory lane and a look forward as well. So, and to explain some of where we are with the Surface. So I think that probably the best plan is for us to meet again, maybe in the new year, and we can talk some more about Surface, because I've really enjoyed doing this chat tonight.
It's been lovely, thank you.
Yeah, and where's the best place anybody follow you guys?
Well, everyone's moving on Twitter now, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I'm on. I'm on Twitter. I'm just Quickenden. I'm on Twitter. I'm on most of the platforms, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Alex.
Easiest way to find me is on Solaat.no, so my middle name.no. But you're also gonna find me on the Blue Screen Brothers on YouTube or Spotify. If you do the Spotify edition, don't blame me if you don't understand Norwegian.
I did try on the way back from Summit, actually, and I did have to give up.
We have a translator built into Windows for that. I'm going to show you at Summit.
We do. I was about to say that.
I'm going to show you at Summit.
I was about to say that. We do. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I really do appreciate you joining us tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing you on a future show.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.